Oh, yes,
Yeah,
it
yay.
is.
It's not misbehaving, or at least it's pretending not to misbehave. Who knows? Let's have a look, see whether or not it's there. I have to say the lag on Monday wasn't too bad at all.
No, it wasn't, was it? It was quite good. It was pretty good. So,
yeah, there we are.
We are now live.
Yeah.
So, hello everyone. Welcome to tonight's live session with myself, Holly Mac from Evolving Careers, and Polly Hearsey from Soul Expression Alchemists. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah,
correct. I suddenly thought, oh, that's 3 long words. I hope I've got them in the right order.
It actually doesn't matter if they're in that order or not.
This is very true. Very true. So, we would love to know how everybody got on with the topic of success and the guided visualization that Polly shared on Monday. And also, if you have any questions more generally related to career change, starting a business, growing and expanding your business, and being more true to yourself in whatever you do for work, then we are totally open to a broad range of questions this evening or this afternoon if you're in the US. And we also will be announcing the winner of Polly's masterclass. So hopefully we'll just give a few more minutes and see who shows up on the live. I know a few people are here. Hi, Lindsay. I'm also looking for a few other people to join. So we'll get started in a couple of minutes. We'll just see how things go. How about Polly? Have you had any further comments or reflections on Monday since you gave that session?
Reflections, definitely, because there's been a lot brewing in my head in this week. And I do just want to reiterate the fact that it's this can work quite slowly, but it can also be quite intense. So things can start, they can be drip, drip, drip. And as a client said to me today, said it was drip, 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 and then all of a sudden just the tap went, and she just had this massive amount of stuff that come through. So just be open to that, and it'll come when it comes, and just don't be surprised. Just greet it and meet it when it does come. Don't worry about it and the speed at which it goes. I always say the energy goes at the speed the energy goes. There's nothing you can do about it. The more you push against it, the worse it's going to be. It's just easier to let it do what it does. So I think that I'd like to say, whatever is coming up for people, because over the last 3 weeks we've explored some deep topics which have required a lot of self-reflection. So whatever is coming up for you as a result of going through that is what needs to be addressed. So we're here to catch you. I think I can't get my words out today. Would like to reinforce that.
So I'm just going to put a shout out to you, those who are watching live now. Do give us a comment and tell us, did you do the visualization? What happened for you? Was there anything that was unusual that you weren't expecting? I know for me, when I did it, I just did it live. I haven't done it again since, Polly. But I was surprised by 2 things. One is it showed me that I need to change something, not the external thing that I thought it was. And 2, even though you went quite quick through it, I actually found that quite helpful, because I didn't end up procrastinating. I was like, oh, I better just pick the first thing that comes into my head. And it was a really good pointer to me that so often we can overthink a lot of things.
Yes.
And the first thing that comes up is so often the thing that we most need to address or look at. But our brain often works against us and tries to tell us that we're wrong, that that's not what we need. And in particular, if it doesn't seem logical, there can be a bit of an aversion to it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's worth it. But that doesn't make sense. It rarely does. I mean, if you are You know, if you're getting nudges or ideas or thoughts constantly coming up, or, you know, it's just like, just seeing the same theme come up and again, and it's like light years away from what you're doing now, there's something in there. However hard it is to believe that that's what's going on, there's a lot to be said for it. It's just quite hard. Well, we've got Lindsay said something here.
Lindsay shared that she listened to it again and found that she's holding herself back.
Well, the question is, Lindsay, did you find out how you were holding yourself back, or is that something that you need to go back into and explore? Did you know what it was that was you were holding yourself back, or how? And if that's the case, can you fix it? Can you address it?
So Lindsay and I actually had a little bit of a chat about this in the week, and she shared that one of the ways that she's doing that is around public speaking. She hasn't done that for quite a long time. She does speak a lot of languages, and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this, but she does find it easier to do in a foreign language because she feels like it's that confidence of, well, she's already making that effort to speak another language and do it well. And I asked her in the group, what could she commit to in order to work towards overcoming that a little bit? And so often small steps are the key. And she said she'd already looked at some groups that could support with that. Lindsay's just saying exactly there.
Yeah.
Would you add anything to that?
Public speaking is like, there are many studies which show that people are more scared of public speaking than they are of dying. Now, that says a huge amount about how vulnerable we feel when we're speaking. So I think it's really interesting that Lindsay can do it in a different language, because I wonder whether or not there's a layer of protection there. Rather than just, well, I'm already putting in the effort. That might be a one conscious way of thinking about it, but I wonder if there's a level of protection because it's in a different language. Do you see what I mean? I don't know if that makes sense. So
Lindsay says that explains a lot, just so you know.
the question is, why is it the public speaking? Is it because you know that the public speaking is going to be the thing that unlocks something else? Or is it just because it is a really terrifying thing? That's the question to explore.
So we've also got Helen Maria and Petra joining us. I hope I've pronounced both of your names correctly. So we're just asking, did you have a go at the guided visualization from Monday? And if you did, how was the experience for you? Did it bring anything that was surprising up for you? Did it maybe give you a different perspective on something? I know for me, going through the elements, that's something I've never done before. And my brain was picking out certain pictures around that. But what I did find is it didn't really matter what my brain went to. It allowed me to almost get a 360-degree look at the situation that I had in mind.
That is the really key thing, the 360-degree look, because we get so entrenched in our position and our perspective that we only see one angle of it. So I often refer to it like, if you had this perfect sphere in the center of a circle and you walk all the way around it, it doesn't matter that it is exactly the same. You are seeing a different angle of it with every movement that you take. And it's so important. That's what the elements let us do. They let us see everything from a different angle. And if you don't allow yourself to move around and see a problem or a solution from every angle, then you're missing out a piece of the puzzle. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. And for me, that links with what you were just sharing with Lindsay about, is there an element of protection there? Because I think so often we don't look at things from all angles, because on some level we're protecting ourselves from something else, right?
Well, yeah, I mean, and you, because it means we actually might have to change our opinion. but our opinion is based upon the things that we feel that we have control over. So if we have to change our opinion, we're also losing control over. So it's unraveling a very big picture if we start to do that. Having said that, I mean, that's what we think is going to happen. But actually, once you start to do it routinely, you understand that it gives you more control or more understanding and more acceptance, and you're more relaxed about the whole thing.
Definitely. So Lindsay also shared that, when she's talking in another language, there's less pressure to be coherent, whereas in English, she's got to be more coherent. And there's something around being put on the spot and having to, feeling panicky, having to come up with an answer quickly.
Right. Now, the feeling panicky about having to come up with an answer is to do with you being fully anchored in what your genius is. Because there's a transition point where you move from struggling to find your words to being unable to shut up. It's a great transition point, but any stimulus actually sets you off and you go, oh, right, yes, I can talk about that for hours. That's when you are really working in your zone of genius. So if you're in a state of panic, you may still be working in your zone of genius, but the question you have to ask yourself is, how much do you value what you're doing? Okay. Now, I don't mean to say that you don't think that what you do isn't valuable, but how much do you value the contribution of what you're doing and the importance of what you're doing in the bigger picture? And that's really, really key at a time like this, when we have a global pandemic and a huge amounts of social unrest. And it's really easy to turn around and say, oh yeah, but my work's not really that important in this context. And there was a piece in the paper today about what's an essential job and what's not an essential job. And a lot of people in society thought that what was it that wasn't, artists weren't essential. They weren't a key worker. And yet, that might be people's perspective. But if you challenged them on that and said, well, hang on a second, what have you been doing with your time while you've been in lockdown? Oh, I've been watching reruns of. Well, don't you need artists for that? So they've been absolutely essential. So I just want, if you've got any questions in there about how much you value your work within the global context or the local context, or even within, if you want to stack it up, you may have this dynamic in your family life where you're actually trying to stack it up against everything else that other family members are doing. Is it really that important? And if there's anything that comes up for you around that, then there's some work to do to flip what you think, because that does have a really big impact on your ability to just be put on the spot and speak. I hope that sort of makes sense.
Yeah, it made sense to me. Hopefully it made sense to Lindsay.
Yeah.
I would just draw on that myself. And I think you touched on a really important point about knowing where your zone of genius is. And I think for me, that's certainly been an iterative process.
Yes.
When I first changed career and changed up my work life, I went through a huge period of feeling inadequate, not good enough. The thought of having to talk on that topic brought me out in hives almost. I would be like, do I even know enough? And I would say for me, and this doesn't work for everyone, but for me, putting myself in that situation more is what gave my brain the data to realize it wasn't something I needed to be scared of.
Yeah.
And I think the other thing to note, it was a conversation that I had with earlier this week with Anne-Marie, who is going to be doing the rapid transformational therapy session coming up in a few weeks' time, which will be a live and full session, which is really totally amazing to have as an experience and a great way to try out this kind of therapy if you've never done anything like that. But what she was saying is that our brain cannot tell the difference between fear and excitement. Yeah. And I think this is a really good thing to know, that when you start moving into your zone of genius, moving into that area that you're super passionate about, that you have skills, strengths, talents, and experience in, the sense of charge in the body can rise really, really high. For me, I feel it coming from my stomach all the way up to my throat, and sometimes in my head around here gets a bit foggy. And in the beginning, my brain was interpreting that as fear, because it was the adrenaline rush, it was the charge that I could feel. But over time, I came to realize that it was excitement, and it became much more grounded with practice, just putting myself out there. But build up slowly, I would say. Don't jump in and say, right, I'm going to do the King's Speech next. Someone mentioned that in the comments. You know, start with something small, even if it's, you know, going live on your own Facebook and saying hello to your friends for a few minutes. Hi, Philly. Nice to see you live in the group. And also, you know, there might be opportunities to do that just in terms of maybe you could talk to somebody else in your friendship group, or in your, maybe if you're doing any online courses and things like that, maybe have a practice at presenting yourself to somebody else on a topic that you do feel comfortable with, and prepare for it and go through the process. It only needs to be 3 minutes. Doesn't have to be very, but just build up step by step, slowly but surely.
And yeah, I think that's actually a really, going live is a really good example, because it's one of the things that people will hold off doing that for years. You know, if it's an important part of your business, to still hold off doing it for years. There's ways around you can do it. You can actually go live and set it to only yourself to see, or you can record it and then put it live. You know, there's lots of ways of taking the baby steps that actually stretch you into it, and all you actually need is just to get out the other end of it and not be dead, which is because that's really what your brain is telling you, is that this is just too scary. And Anne-Marie put a quote up in the group, was it today or yesterday? And it just made me think. There was one of the things I used to do is I used to train people in crisis media management. So and what I learned when I went into that, which most people don't know, is that when you do a radio interview or a TV interview or something like that, or basically when you're being interviewed or public speaking, all you hear in your head is, you know, those microseconds when you are processing, that's what you hear. That's not what anybody else hears. And so I used to be horrible in the crisis media management, because you really have to have your answer very clear with that. And you'd push and push and push people, and they'd be like, oh my God, what have I just said? And then you'd play back the radio recording to them, and they'd go, oh, okay, it wasn't that bad. So what you hear, feel, see, and sense of what you're doing when you're public speaking or you're doing a live video is got nothing on what everybody else is experiencing. They don't see the cracks and the fissures that you see. So it's like there is a big divide.
I know, and I've certainly done things and people have been like, oh, that was really good, and I've been like, really?
Are you sure?
That was terrible. I've never done that before. You know, and the thing is, everybody has those feelings, and so when people watch you, people tend not to judge as harshly as you judge yourself. That's for sure.
Yes. Yeah, we are our worst critics. Absolutely. Every single time.
So I'm just going to put the request out to everyone that's live. We would love to know, how did you get on with the guided visualization that Polly shared on Monday? Did it bring up anything unusual? Did anything surprise you? Did it show you anything you didn't expect, or maybe exactly what you already knew?
Sorry, Helen Maria, that's exactly what it's like. Yes, authors who do not like their own writing.
Oh gosh, yeah. And you know, Nicola, who's doing the live on Monday, she actually works with people that want to write books, and so she brings a whole wealth of wisdom around that kind of stuff. And just on sharing your experiences, don't feel that you have to go into any detail. We're not going to put you on the spot and ask you for personal details that you don't want to share or anything like that. It would just be great. Give us a thumbs up and let us know if you did the exercise. You don't necessarily have to comment. And as we said earlier, this is your chance to ask us anything that you would like to know. If you have a particular situation going on in your work life, if you have just a burning question, it can be totally specific or it can be very broad and open. You know, I think you'll probably agree with me, Polly, when I work with clients, they come to me all the time, and sometimes they're really nervous to reach out because they feel like they don't know quite what their question is. And so often what I love is when clients say, you know, I really don't know, but this is what's going on for me. Or, you know, I'm having this negative experience and I don't know what that's about. I think that not knowing is a really positive place to be, because it means you're open to the transformation, you're open to the change and the growth.
Yeah, and just to say, I don't know, to say it out loud. Let's not underestimate the magnitude of saying out loud, I don't know, because we're expected, particularly in work. And, you know, it's definitely the glossy online entrepreneur rubbish that we all see. We're expected to know everything. We're not allowed to be vulnerable. We're not allowed to be able to say, I don't know. So to actually turn that around and say, I don't know. There's something here, and I don't think I don't know if you're going to be able to help me because I don't know what it is, so I can't give you any leads. And it's just like, do you know what? Sometimes you just go, somebody else will catch a thread for you, and
Absolutely.
just take you there.
Yeah, so don't be shy. Do share your experiences, because we can only share the solutions and help find those threads if you are willing to open up on that. If you're willing to say, you know, what did you realize? What did you not realize? You know, and if you found it was rubbish, we're totally open to that as well. You know, that happens. That's happened to me. I've tried so many things at times. I thought, oh God, that didn't really work for me. And that's all part of the process as well, is like learning what works for you, because not everything that we offer in this group is going to work for everyone.
No.
But one of the blessings is we've got 8 wonderful teachers. So every week you get the chance to look at things from a different perspective, from someone who's had a different set of life experience.
Yeah.
One person you might resonate with a lot more than another. So that's the power of the group.
And I think there's a word you've used quite a few times, and that is iterative. So every week there's going to be another dimension that comes to what you're going through, and it's going to bring out more stuff. So what I find is that the pieces start to drop into place quicker the further you go along. So it'll start to make sense. And there is an analogy I use. It's like, you know, when you're moving house and you've done all the big stuff, and then you're down to all the random odds and sods that are all over your house, and you've got boxes and you just don't know what to do with them because there's no logical way of sorting them. It's not like they're going in the kitchen. It's not, do you know, and so you just end up with this chaos around you, and it just feels like it's a much bigger thing than it really is, because it's just like we're just in the thick of it and we can't see how we're going to get past this utter chaos, and we don't know what box to put things in. And yet it can be then the one tiniest thing, like putting the spoon in the right box, that then everything just goes thump, and it flows again. So I would anticipate that a lot of people will go through a phase through the 8 weeks where they have that moment of, oh my God, you know, it's just all around me. I'm not quite sure. I can't sort through it. So don't feel that you can't ask the question then and there, even if it relates back 4 weeks ago, because that's the nature of working through all of this stuff.
Yeah, I'd say that's very true. I think so many times in my life, what's happened for me is I've been reading, watching, learning, growing, and all the pieces are there. It's a bit like a jigsaw with all the pieces in a mess. And I sort of think there's a bit of a frame there, but I can't tell what the picture is going to be yet.
Yeah.
and then all of a sudden you get one piece and your brain just zooms in, it narrows down, goes, okay, I can connect all of this now.
Yeah. And that's the beauty. I mean, that's, to me, that's one of the beautiful things about collaborative working, whether that's like this event, or whether it's in teams in workplace, but whatever it is, collaborative working gives you that, gives you a higher chance of finding that one piece that makes everything else fall into place, which is why, as far as I'm concerned, my job with, with my clients is one bit. I'm capitalizing, I'm working with what's come before, and I'm preparing the ground for what's going to come next. I am a piece. Sometimes I'm the piece that puts a little bit more of the picture in place, and sometimes I'm the piece that puts the whole picture in place. But it's our journey is the journey that we have. We can't predict it, we can just support it.
Yeah, great words there. Yeah. Absolutely. So unless there's any more questions coming forward, I'm going to give this final shout out as your last chance to put any questions forward to us. And do remember, if you don't feel comfortable sharing it in the group, I know a lot of people are introverted, you can drop the questions to me on email, or you can message any of the teachers in the group on Facebook with your questions, and we will more than happily answer them anonymously if you wish. So I think you're just reading that next question, aren't you, Polly? I'll let you read it to me this time.
Oh, that's a good question.
So, interested in careers advice because careers advice you had was so poor. Yeah, I can totally relate to that, and so can a lot of people. Careers advice in the UK is certainly, it's only an emerging sector right now. So I'm actually doing my master's in career development, but believe it or not, this as a subject area that can be studied is only offered at a very small number of universities right now. And I would say it's very much at the emerging end of the spectrum. So there is only in the last 10 years been the establishment of the Career Development Institute of a professional route that is recognised by government and by organisations that employ careers advisors. There is still very much in terms of career advice and guidance types of, and coaching types of roles. There's a real spectrum right now still in terms of, I think some organisations are working with employees who don't necessarily have a big depth of training, and also others are really looking for those qualifications. So it's a real interesting field in that sense. And what I love about it, certainly in what I'm studying, is that there's a lot of evidence and a lot of models that have been developed around career advice. But there's also, the world has shifted since a lot of the theories were created. I think we're moving into a world where we no longer have a linear career, and one of the big things that is taught on those career development programs is that it's more cyclical, it's more up and down, it's a constant process of evolution, of iteration. I love that word, iteration and evolving. That's my words, if you like. But you're asking that, so for someone who's experienced in life and can appreciate the importance of this bus, how do you get a young person to see this, and is that too big? Whether you're thinking of somebody in particular here, and I think we might need a little bit more information if you are thinking about a specific person. If you can share more, Helen Maria, it might be helpful.
But I do think that, for young people, one of the key messages is you're in the experimentation zone, and it's okay to experiment because you're testing out. So as you say, that the career paths aren't linear anymore. So if you're talking about, you know, talking to somebody about their options, I mean, what we used to get was this, like, right, well, okay, these are the only things you're qualified to do. You know, that was the extent of careers advice, wasn't it? It's like that, go scrub the streets or whatever. You know, you got was the archetypal horrible, you know, horrible careers advisor who would tell you that you really had no hope in the world. But I think that's not true anymore. We're now into this state where we can support people to experiment and to play. But I still think that young people are quite clear on their strengths. They might need a little bit of support around it, but they know what their strengths are because they've actually been using them their entire life. And I have that conversation with my son, who's just about to turn 12. I mean, and I know that he's got particular strengths, and I'm not constantly zoning in on what his strengths and his genius is. So I think it's possible to do it, but to reinforce the fact that people have no limits in terms of, you know, young people have no limits in terms of the experimentation that they can undertake to find what it is that really lights them up.
I think that's some great advice there, Polly. Helen Maria, I can give you, I have a set of 6 questions that I use with young people. And this is really, I think, much more suitable to young people when we're talking teenage and 20s. I'm not talking about very, very young people here. Hang on, I'm just going to read your response. So the problem is there's a financial implication now to the choices you're making, and degrees are slightly more focused rather than leading to opening your mind. Yes. There is a challenge right now in the market, and nobody knows where it's going to go, in the sense of universities are, if you take a degree, the statistics show that that degree knowledge will likely be out of date before you even complete the degree. So the things you learn in your first 2 years of study will be irrelevant by the time you graduate. Okay, so that's quite scary. The price of university is astronomical. And at the end of that, there is no guarantee of a job. You still have to have done the personal development work to be able to get through an interview, to be able to present yourself to an employer in the proper way. There is a huge emphasis in terms of government policy, which is away from university. Not in terms of don't go to university, but there's a recognition that there's been an overemphasis on the academic routes into work over the past 10 years. And they are trying to address that by putting a lot more support out there for enterprise. So for people that want to start businesses as young people. But also, I think, you know, with apprenticeship routes and those types of routes, some of the apprenticeships, and particularly the higher apprenticeships, are phenomenal these days, but they're so overlooked. And there can often be a bit of stigma about them, as in, you know, some people do still think that oh, that's for the people that haven't done well in school, and it's absolutely not the case. I mean, I think I'd say more generally for young people, the piece of the puzzle that is missing in careers advice, this is in my personal opinion, is the self-awareness piece. So often, even today, a young person will go to the careers advisor, the school, the careers and employability service, or seek advice from other professionals, perhaps if you're out of work and that sort of thing. And everything is focused around skills. What qualifications have you got? What are your skills? And so on. And one of the things that never ceases to surprise me is how little we say to young people the simple questions. So, is work going to be important in your life, do you think? Why? Why not? What do you want from work? Do you have any idea of what you want work to give you? What do you think you can offer to work? What are the things that you enjoy? What are your strengths? What types of environments and situations do you like to be in? I think then where most careers services and career coaches do focuses on the opportunity awareness, which is that question of, you know, what are the opportunities that are out there. They tend to say, you know, either go do some profiles and get some sense of yourself, or have a look at jobs and just see what interests you. And it's kind of like looking for a needle in a haystack, especially when you're young, but I think also as adults, and particularly if you're changing career too. And so one of the things that I notice is there's always a difference between what someone perceives the work will offer and then what the reality of what the work demands. So for example, when I was young, I went through all the career profiling and I was looking at engineering, and I was told, as an engineer, you will get to travel, you'll be out and about on site, you'll be, you know, there was a whole list of things, you'll be well paid, you're, you know, so many things. And I thought, wow, that's for me. The reality of the job that I took didn't match that perception. The job that I took was a design engineering role, which meant I was sat in an office. I very rarely got to travel. If I did go to site, the time had to be limited because I was office based. Because of health, safety and risk stuff, I couldn't do a lot of things. And so one of the things I really encourage young people to do is to explore, what do they perceive that this work job will be like? And then what will it really demand? And they can find out what it will really demand by talking with people in that industry who do that job, by talking to people that might be hiring for those kind of jobs as well. So I've got 2 comments here. Definitely a needle in a haystack. I've been at it for months. Yeah, it really is. I think it doesn't help that the way we do job search is very old-fashioned right now. It's dependent on job titles. It's not dependent on keywords in a large enough way. And I think that's a real shame and a massive opportunity. And then we've also got, yes, I really think that's it. That doesn't happen for youngsters. And when you end up looking at it at 40, when you're dissatisfied. But obviously the problem is they don't have the life experience when they're young. Yeah, totally understand that. But I'd also say adults often think young people don't have work experience. And it's true, they may not have experience of the world of work, but the one thing they do have experience of is themselves. And that's why this self-awareness piece is so, so important. If you can get them to look at how important is work in their life. So some young people, particularly those who are of faith, might think about missions and might think of, I don't know, what's their purpose in life. I remember reading the Purpose Driven Life book that a Christian friend gave to me, which I thought was interesting, but it was very adult, okay? But just the simplest way I can say that question, and this is how I say it to young people and to my clients, is I'd say get out of your normal environment. I know it's very hard right now because of COVID, but this is what I would advise young people to do, and anyone that's going through a career change. You've got to get out of your normal environment, of the normal influences, because the people you talk to at work and the people who know you will know the way you think based on the experiences that they've seen you go through. So if you can, take a day away. Go, even if you just have to go for a walk, and even if it's not in the most beautiful place, even if it's down the street, and think about this one question, which is, what's meaningful to me? What do I think really matters? What's the change that I think needs to happen in the world? How do I see that? How do I see that as being solved? You know, what are the different ways that could be solved? Because ultimately you can go through all this logic of how do you decide on a career, and you can focus on what most people do is they focus on careers in the sense of how can I create the lifestyle that I want, okay? Or they focus on how can I have the simplest route that matches my attributes. They're the 2 typical ways. But if you follow both of those ways, you kind of only get half the reward. You get the material rewards, you get the lifestyle, or you get the, simplicity that you might be looking for, but you don't necessarily get that sense of fulfillment, that spark, that feeling of like, I know I'm on the right path, and because there's nothing else that I would want to do more, because this is so meaningful to me. And what you don't need to do is worry about whether that's right or wrong, because especially if you're a midlife career changer, the tendency is to think, I've got to get this right this time. And that's a bit of a flawed way of looking at it, because it's always this iteration. So what you have to do is take your best guess, and essentially think about it more in the sense of, as long as you are following the joy, the happiness, the sense of meaning, you will naturally end up in the right place for you. You might have to take a few stepping stones to get there. And this is something I talk a lot about with career change, is the stepping stones, because people often come into a career change with the expectation that they're going to come up with this genius idea of what they're going to do next, and then suddenly create a magical way to get there. And the reality is, there's time, there's a financial cost if you have to retrain, because the reality is some careers will not give you access to them unless you have the right qualifications. And the process of figuring that out is like, it's almost like the process I take people through is find 3 options, 3 things and areas that might interest you, that you have a sense of meaning in and a sense of purpose in. And think about, what are the books you read? What are the movies you watch? What's the thing you're always learning about that maybe other people don't know, or that you don't share with other people? How do you show up for your friends? Is there something that they're always asking you for advice about that you feel like you might, with a bit of focused effort, you could develop further? They can be some great keys into it as well. But once you found those 3 options, go explore them. Don't just sit there and say, right, well, I've got my options, I've got to pick one, and I've got to pick the right one, and then I've got to train in it. Before you do any of that, go and talk to people who work in those industries. Find out what the routes in are, find out what the roles are, find out if there's alternative routes. Many career paths have alternative routes in that don't require retraining, but some do. And you have to figure that out. And there is no getting around that sometimes. And it's the hardest part of career change. And it's the hardest part, I think, of being young, that it's so easy when you don't have a lot of experience to do something and take yourself in the wrong direction. But just around the question of university, which was kind of implied earlier, one of the big mistakes that I see many people make in their thinking is that they think that young people have to make the right choice. These days, as long as you get a degree, many organisations are open to taking on graduates from any background, particularly if you want to go into things like HR, if people want to go into things like anything to do with the government, anything to do with civil service. As long as you have a degree that you've got a decent grade in, generally above a 2-2, so you're looking for a 2-1 or a first, then you have a lot of options open to you, and it will undoubtedly open doors. And I think that, combined with the experience of university, can be very, very positive for many people as well. There's a few comments in the group. Let's just have a quick look at these. So yes, I like that. I heard that said, don't think what do I want to be, rather than what do I want to devote my time to. Absolutely. And the litmus test for this, if you want to know if you're heading down the right path, is think to yourself, will I still be interested in this in 10 years time? And will I still be interested in this in 20 years time? And if the answer's, my thoughts might develop, but yes, I feel like that's generally going to keep me engaged and I would love to be an expert in this, then you're on the right track. Sorry, I've whittled on quite a bit there, Polly.
I've been taking all that on board. I think that's very true. It's all very true.
And so I'll just run through those questions again that might help you. So the first one is, how important do I want work to be in my life? And to support that, ask yourself, what do I want from work? And if you can get a list and rank it, that can be really helpful. And then what can I offer to work? And again, think about what evidence you have that shows what you can offer to work and where there might be gaps, so particularly with a career change. And then the third question is, do I want to consider my perceived or legitimate opportunities? Because some people only want to consider their perceived opportunities and other people want to look at what's realistic. So what does the work that I'm thinking of going into offer? Does it match the list of what I want from work? And then what does the work actually demand? So when you look at what work demands, you can be thinking about hours, environment, all the lifestyle types of things there, and you'll get a good overview with those 6 questions. So I hope that might help some of you. Get three relevant options is a good place to start, and go through those 6 questions for 3 options, and then do the litmus test of, can I be interested in this for a long time? Hi, Vediana, nice to see you here. We have got just 10 minutes left, so if anybody does have any further questions or comments to add, this is the time to pop them into the group. And while we just wait for those questions to come through, we have an announcement of the winner of this week's competition. So I'll let Polly introduce it and share a little bit about it, and over to you, Polly.
Okay, so I have a series of masterclasses, and I have made that option available in the competition. So there's a series of them that they work as a series, and they also work independently. So is there 5? She says I think there might be 7 in there now, but there's definitely 5, I think. Is that right, Holly?
I can't remember the number, to be honest, Polly. I was just typing a reply to Helen Maria.
Yeah, that's right. I think there's 5, but there may be another couple. Anyway, so there's a series of masterclasses on really about particularly if they're particularly focused on running your own business, but they are the skills that are well, the approach to take in terms of bringing your true essence out into whatever you're doing. So they're valuable for that. And I've made that available in the competition. And the winner for that is Philly, if you're still live. If not, I will message you and get in touch with you and get you the details of how, if you want to accept that, how to access it.
Well done, Philly.
Yep.
Congratulations on winning that prize. So do drop us a line, message us, or you can email me at holly@evolving.careers, or simply look Polly up and find her. So that's Philly Rule, just in case you're wondering whether it's really you. Yes, you have won that prize. Congratulations. What I would say is I had a little bit of a look at that program. I have to say I've only done the first part of it, but it's totally relevant whatever direction you're going in. There are some brilliant exercises for tapping into your unique essence and your zone of genius, I would say. And it gave me, even though I've been doing this stuff before, I really enjoyed going back over some of the things I haven't thought about maybe in quite a long time, and got some useful insights about myself from that. So well done, Philly. She says this has been insightful conversation.
Good, excellent. That's what we like to hear.
It is. So, yeah, it is. And we can only deliver to the questions that we get. So as you go through this next 8 weeks, if a question pops up in the middle of the week, just drop a line to us, or make a note of it. you know, even if you can't make it live, do share those questions, because we are so here to help and guide you on this journey, because we've all been through it. Every single teacher that is speaking has been through these types of questions and will share their experiences of it in a different way. And sometimes it can just be that one person says it in a particular way or a particular line and the light bulb goes off, as we said earlier. So
yeah, it's like that classic thing, isn't it? I just said that 30 seconds ago. Somebody's just like, just has to, they could even say exactly the same words, but there's something about it. So, you know, it's just like and I'm just sure that the 8 of us will say the same things, you know, have the same messages. We'll use different words, but we'll have the same messages. But somewhere along the line, it'll just, the dots will connect. Yeah,
absolutely.
So, yeah.
So as we come to a close for tonight, we haven't got any more questions, but what I will do is just remind you that on Monday, same time, 6 p.m. in the UK, 1 p.m. in the US, in Eastern time, we will have joining us a lady called Nicola Humber. So Nicola is an author, and she also started up the Unbound Press, which is a publisher who specifically help women and women's issues and help people to write their books. Now, although she's an author, and you might be sitting here thinking, oh, I don't really want to write a book, or I'm not sure about that, if that's for me. What I would say is she is going to be talking about one of the things that she writes about in her most recent book, which is called Unbound. And that is the topic that she's talking about, is cycles and rhythms. So this to me is where I think Nicola is at her best for me. When I've read her books, when I've followed her work, she talks about this concept of how everything in life is all push, 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 and about being consistent all the time. And we take that consistency to mean constantly being at 100%. And she really challenges our perceptions of what it means to be consistent, both in work and business, but also as women, and working with our natural cycles. And without giving too much away, what I will say is this is going to be one that you do not want to miss. I mean, every single teacher is one you don't want to miss, in my opinion. But if you've ever thought about writing a book, definitely watch this one. And if you ever feel like you're always pushing yourself and you sometimes burn yourself out, or maybe you have the opposite problem where you're always in the relaxed mode and you need to learn to be a little bit more dynamic, this session is going to have lots and lots of advice for you. And within that session, we are going to be giving away a small number of books. I'm not 100% sure how many yet. Depends how many people turn up live. But we will be giving away some copies of her book. And it is a super book with lots of great exercises and thoughts, particularly if you ever have disliked a part of your body. She has a brilliant exercise about what that can teach us about our mindset and our outlook on life. So we look forward to seeing you there. Do keep commenting over the next few days. The people who will win these prizes are the people that we see as being the most engaged. One of the things Polly did is you went through the list and looked at who'd been watching all the videos, right?
Yeah.
And your winner. So yep. We do see everything. We do note who's watching the videos. So bear that in mind, and we'd love to hear more from you also. Keep in touch, think about your questions, and apart from that, enjoy the rest of your evening.
Yeah, excellent.
Any final thoughts from you, Polly?
No, but I am really looking forward to Nicola's session on Monday. That's going to be absolutely brilliant. So I think, let's
have you seen Nicola's work before?
No, I haven't. I mean, it was coming together for this that actually there was this we'd sort of connected a little bit before it, but it's really only coming through this. So I'm really looking forward to sort of that introduction to Nicola's work and seeing what she's going to share.
Okay,
it's going to be good.
one final comment, which is, can we put some book titles to read here in the comments, including this book, Unbound, from Helen Maria VC. Yeah. So I don't know, one of my favorite books, I actually talked about it the other day on I think it was last Thursday, is The Further Reaches of Human Nature. But it's a slightly academic book because Maslow passed away as he was writing this book. So a friend of his put it together from his the start of his work. But he essentially had written a lot of papers, academic papers, that he wanted to turn into a book and never got a chance to finish it. So his friend put those papers together and tried to make the links that he was wanting to make. That is one of my favorite books. But it's very broad. But what Maslow's work is really the foundation of many, many of my beliefs around and my teachings around careers, because he was one of the first people to recognize that instead of looking at what most people do and the norms in society, he was like, why don't we look at the best specimens, the people who are healthiest and happiest and most joyful, and why don't we model their behaviors? Which I think is just, a fantastic approach, because it's a very different and very untraditional approach in terms of science. We tend to look at the norms a lot more in the averages, which actually aren't always the most intelligent approaches, I find.
Well, the law of averages is exactly that. It averages out. So the genius bits of it that are on the margins, aren't they?
Yes.
So you're bringing everyone down to the lowest common denominator rather than the highest common denominator. So yeah, I'm absolutely totally on with you on that one.
Perhaps what we can do, rather than just put it in this thread, is perhaps what we can do is ask each of the teachers to recommend a book, and we'll put that as a post each day next week, so that rather than get a big flood, we can just keep those coming. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I have to say, one of the books that I have absolutely loved, although it is specifically focused on women, I think there's a lot for a society, is a book called If Women Rose Rooted, and that really is about there's a lot of metaphors, but it's about the connection to yourself, and so that's a really good one to read.
If Women Rose Rooted. Who wrote that?
Now you're challenging me. I think it's Sharon Blackie.
Sharon Blackie.
Yeah, it's very good if you like a lot of mythology as well, because she talks a lot about the Celtic mythology.
Oh, it sounds like a book I might have to read. I've not read that.
Yeah, it is a good one.
Yeah, and I'd say as well, some of the old books are really good to read on social science. So the Penguin books, there's a little book called The Stagnant Society, which is really interesting because it talks about what makes a thriving society. And although it's talking about the social science and the bigger picture, for me, there were so many little clues in that book about what makes for a positive experience of life. And for me, I think I'm interested in that because of I think we're missing community a lot in the modern world, particularly in the West, in a way that, if you travel to India, if you have ever seen tribes or watched programs about tribes, there's a real sense of connection with people, but also with the environment, with Mother Earth, with our whole ecosystem that we live within. And this comes to mind, and it's random, but it's just an interesting thought, which is I can't remember the name of the book. I'll have to look it up and perhaps post it next week. But there's a book that talks about the digestive system and how we always think of things being inside as part of us. So when you think about your body, you think that everything inside you is you. But this book talks about how the body is really more like a donut, like this, and we are just one tube from mouth to bottom, and everything that's in the middle of the donut, inside that hole, is the microbiome, and it's not us, it's all this other stuff. And without that other stuff, we can't function. And I just love that idea.
It's 90-something%, isn't it?
Yes.
So we're 98. Is it that we're 98% space between atoms, for starters? So, you know, in terms of what is actually substance is tiny. So we go off at a complete tangent here. And then the other bit is the microbiome, which is like we have more species inside of us than you do get in something. I'm sure there's a statistic like there's more species inside of us than there is in a centimeter of square centimeter, cube centimeter of Earth, or something like that. It's just mind blowing. Yes. So we have we are the universe to a whole host of bacteria.
There's in yoga, we're going to the more spiritual end of the spectrum here, but there must be a reason why this has come up. For those that like yoga, I'm a yoga teacher as well, and one of the very interesting rituals and practices that I was taught was every day when you see the sunrise, at some point where you see the sun up in the sky, think about the fact that the sun and the earth are floating in space. So there's all of this empty space that is holding everything up in the air. And the atoms of our body are just like that. And the aim of this ritual is to connect your brain with this sense of wonder and awe. And I think that's a really nice technique. If you do that for a week, you'll and really think about the fact that you're not seeing just a bright light in the sky. This is something my other half says. He always says, really try to imagine it as a ball that's the sun is a ball that's floating in space, and the earth is another ball, another mass that's floating in space. And imagine everything, and the moon as well. You can do it in the evening with the moon, and just notice that space. And I think one of the things that we have a tendency to do in life is go through and fill the space all the time, and holding that space and allowing things to just be is such a powerful tool for all of us.
So Helen Marie said about functional medicine. I have to tell you that I have a client who makes bark flower remedies, and so Bark was working before Bark started making flower remedies. He was an immunologist, basically. He did a lot of vaccine work, and he was fascinating on the biome and how, because his view back in the 1920s was that vaccines had to be created for each individual person to be effective because of the gut bacteria. And the gut bacteria, as Anne-Marie, Helen Marie, sorry, Helen Marie so say, it actually determines how we get sick and how we don't get sick. So I find that endlessly fascinating. You know, that was over 100 years ago that he was starting on that journey into that.
I think one of the things that really has always fascinated me is that as people start to move towards their purpose, so often their diet changes naturally. And I see this I've seen it myself hugely, but I see it with my clients as well. Things that have been problems for years, suddenly they don't crave those things anymore.
I know, because massive changes in diet. It's like all the things that you've used to eat and it's like suddenly stopped. And it's like, for me, I had this thing with milk. All of a sudden, it's like, no, sorry, you can't have it. And my family were going, why? I said, I don't know. Just can't have milk anymore.
I've gone through that. I can't have milk anymore. I can have maybe a small amount as a treat now and again, but having milk every day upsets my stomach now. And I used to love milk. I'd have cereal every day.
Yeah.
You know, it's amazing how that happens. 2 other books that I've just got on my desk, so I will share them with you. One is called A Job to Love. So this is by the School of Life. And it basically says, I'll read you the blurb off the front. Alongside a satisfying relationship, a career we love is one of the foremost requirements for a fulfilled life. Unfortunately, it's devilishly hard to understand yourself well enough to know quite where your energy should be directed. It is to help us out of some of these impasses that they have written the book, A Job to Love, which is a guide to how we can better understand ourselves and locate a job that is right for us. With compassion and a deeply practical spirit, the book guides us to discover our true talents and make sense of our confused desires and aspirations before it's too late. Now, what I would say about this book is I really love that it presents a number of scientific perspectives and social science perspectives in a way that's very easy to understand. However, I would say I also don't necessarily agree with all of the advice in this, because it takes a very privileged look at life. And if you haven't come from a very affluent background, I think you may find some of the advice in this book is a little bit dreamy, is probably the best word that I can give. However, fantastic read, lots of great advice. If you're into careers advice, definitely have a read of this or watch some of the School of Life videos. Another book that I love is Life's Great Question by Tom Rath. So Tom Rath, he's a researcher, and he has worked for oh gosh, what's the company called? It'll come to me later. But he essentially did a study about strengths and how we find our strengths in work. And he created a whole program around this called the Clifton Strengths Finder. And he was part of that research. Now, he then went on to write this book afterwards, which was all about how we need to discover how we contribute to the world, not just know our strengths. And so it's all about this sense of purpose. And it's got a lot of good reviews. And again, I really like this. It's a very short book, and it comes with an online quiz that you can do, which if you buy the book, you get the quiz for free. Whereas if you buy just the quiz, you don't get the book for free, which boggles my mind. But anyway, it's worth having a read of that. It gives a lot of great perspectives on how to find your sense of purpose and what it is that you want to contribute to the world. So if you take that day off, as I suggested, and get out of your usual environment and go think about it, you might want to take this book with you because it's a quick read. Hopefully some of those will help you. But what I would say is all of these books come with a big caveat, in the sense of you will pull gems from each of them. For me, none of them are all encompassing about how do we answer this question. And I think that's because we're all so diverse. We all have such unique backgrounds and perspectives, and we all have to forge our own path at the end of the day. We have to find what works for us as unique individuals, dependent upon where we head and what resonates for us. And so I think on that note, it's time to call it an evening. I need a bit of water now. My throat's gone dry. You're on mute, Polly.
Sorry, there's a bit of noise down here. So yes, have a lovely week, the rest of the week, everybody, and see you again next week.
Look forward to seeing you all on Monday. Take care. Bye.
Bye.